Welcome back to the Dr. Terri Show, where we dive into the real stories, real challenges, and real people shaping America's health and heartland. I'm your host, Dr. Terri tonight, and today we're turning our focus to the backbone of this country, our farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. Joining us is someone who knows this world inside and out. She's a ton of fun, full of energy, full of knowledge. Tate Bennett, Director of Rural Policy at the America First Policy Institute. Tate is leading the charge on policies that impact everyday lives of rural Americans, from agriculture and infrastructure to healthcare access and economic opportunity. In this episode, we'll talk about the real issues facing rural families, why they matter, what's being done about them, and what still needs to change. From skyrocketing input costs for farmers to broadband deserts to the federal regulations impacting small towns, we're covering it all. If you're a farmer or not, the content in this episode matters because it affects the food you eat every day. Let's dive into my conversation with Tate Bennett. Tate Bennett, hello. Director of Rural Policy for America First Policy Institute. Thanks for coming back again. I know it's crazy. You guys are so busy up here. I'm really honored, honestly, really, that everybody's taking the time to do stuff today. But my daughter actually found this hat for
Your
you.
daughter?
Farms, not farms.
Should I put it on now?
Put it on.
Here we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
That is, I can't remember the company, but they have really cute, they have another, they have a sweatshirt that says Make Milk Raw Again, which
love it. Very MAHA strategy adjacent.
Exactly.
Very cool.
Yes.
Everyone, well, maybe this is a new theme because we love coming on your show. All of us at AFPI, I have a hat in mind for you next time.
Okay,
so,
good.
Very good. Why don't we set it up
Throw
there?
that there so people
Amazing. And
see
it's
what
true,
we're going.
folks. It's true. Tell your daughter thank you.
It is. I will. She, well, actually, here's the real story. I ordered 2 of them and I ordered some sweatshirts, and then my other daughter came to my house and goes, I want that. And,
click
so
on.
I had to order another one.
Cart.
So
cute.
But lots has happened since we talked last. Your first show, people loved. I was getting texts. It was so nice because, as you know, we're health and wellness oriented, but there's no bigger conversation about health and wellness, but food security. Food security is national security. I learned that here. I didn't make it up on my own, but it's so true. And then, of course, we've got MAHA. And there's so much to talk about. But one of the first things that I've recognized when people are asking me questions that I don't really know how to answer because I'm new in this machine called DC, and I'm on the fringes, and I'm just dipping my toe in, But explain to us, because I think a lot of people just kind of think that this MAHA movement is just, Secretary Kennedy's, big deal, but it's less HHS and more some other departments. So just kind of pull us back, and what does this look like, and how does this all work?
How does a movement translate into policy?
Absolutely.
Which is what we're seeing now. It's a great, great question. I think Secretary Kennedy has done a phenomenal job with the public awareness and bringing to light these critical needs that need to be addressed, especially when it comes to chronic disease and childhood issues as well. And obviously, he was a force multiplier in that regard and caught the now president's attention in 2024. And so he has brought this agenda to the administration. And to your point, it's not just focused solely on activities that HHS, we love acronyms and DC.
Yes.
So forgive me. Health and Human Services. But there is a lot he can do from his perch there. But really, this is a whole of government, all of government movement. And while I'll be the first to tell you that government is never the answer, I actually think in this regard, when it comes to greater transparency, deregulation, it actually can be additive in accomplishing these goals.
Well, it's gotten just so out of control. And why do we wait till the snowball gets so giant,
That's right.
But at least we're starting some things. But the stats we talked about on other shows with childhood obesity, childhood illness, and then, kids getting on the pharma hamster wheel early on. And really, my passion, as you know, is get to the root cause. And when you peel every onion layer back, the root cause is what we put in our bodies.
Right.
And then that has a whole implication from the farmers, the dairy farmers to, it's not as easy as just everybody, change your farming practices and make sure you don't use glyphosates and make sure you don't do this and make sure you don't do that. There's a lot of implications. A lot of people think, well, let's just change the food in schools real quick. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Nope. It doesn't take that.
100%. There's a lot we can be doing. I think it's going to take a wide net, which they're certainly casting as far as policy solutions. If it'd be helpful, I can just back up and give folks sort of a refresh because people see a report here, a strategy here. What does that mean? And this actually gets to your point. This is larger than just HHS. So as a reminder, in February of this year, the president launched the Make America Healthy Again sort of committee, White House advisory group, and he tasked them with doing an initial assessment, which was the report that came out in May. And then most recently, this past week, I believe on September 9th, was the strategy. We will get to that. But most importantly, that group that he's tasked with putting all of these recommendations together, it's not just HHS, it's not just the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Secretary Brooke Rollins, it's the Environmental Protection Agency. It runs the gamut of those involved with related policies and really bringing the goal was to bring everyone to the table and to do a true assessment and provide solutions in their ballparks, right?
EPA, Ag, HHS.
All the way to sub-agencies, whether it's FDA.
Yeah.
I'm all but certain Department of Interior's involved.
Wow.
You'll have to fact check me, but runs the gamut. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So breaking that down. So we started with here's the agenda, and then they narrowed it down more with this kind of think tank, for lack of better, term, to the strategies. And then I'm just going to high level name off the strategies, if so, and then we can delve into any of them that you want to. But before I do that, and I don't want to get too far down the road before I remember to ask you about when I was here last time, there was a big event, a farmers event. It was amazing. The first ever, I believe, farmers market on the National Mall. How was the success of that? It looked incredible when we were here.
That's right. You were here for the Great American Farmers Market, the first of hopefully many more to come. I think thousands attended over the course of 5 days. There was secretarial level appearances. White House senior staff, Caroline Leavitt, visited, as well as her counterparts to participate in some of the activities. Everything from farm to table, I believe Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Rollins made a meal together, up on stage with items they purchased from the Great American Farmers Market, all the way to goat yoga, which was very popular with the White House press staff. So it was an amazing success. They, in typical Secretary Rollins style, she's able to pull something magnificent together very quickly.
Unbelievable.
I'm on the edge of my seat on what next year could look like.
So there was some really interesting conversations coming up about food waste and what can we do with this food that's, ugly produce, ugly food that we tend to just throw out. So give us an update on that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I have some amazing news to share with you and your listeners. So just less than 2 weeks ago, I was just outside of St. Louis with Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin, rolling and Sarah Fry, who is the CEO of Fry Farms, largest watermelon and pumpkin producer in the United States, rolling out the Feed It Onward food waste reduction initiative for Administrator Zeldin. It's a part of his America 250, celebrating the 250th birthday of the United States initiative for next year. And basically, he's partnering with the private sector to divert foods that were perfectly nutritious, but maybe not marketable, from going into the trash and mounting in our landfills to going to homes. In this instance, we were at Scott Air Force Base, and she donated a truckload showed of these watermelons that looked perfect in my view, of different types and shapes and sizes, and they looked so delicious, and sweet corn. But I was informed on the back end they didn't meet marketing standards, and
it's food.
It is food and so nutritious, and folks were lined up down the street in the parking lot where the commissary was. And so we had a presentation, and there was not one drop of food left.
Well, it's interesting because it was a big initiative when I was working on my doctoral program. Another group of practitioners was really trying to bring awareness to food deserts in lower socioeconomic areas of our country where there's literally nothing but convenience stores to be able to go in and, buy your food, but there's really no healthy, fresh food. So how can we, get a lot of this unmarketable but perfectly healthy, safe, tasty, nutritious food and distribute them to some of these food deserts, for lack of better,
And I'm going to channel my best Sarah Fry, because she's taught me a lot in the rural policy space, especially when it comes to produce. As we are looking onward toward Halloween, Thanksgiving, pumpkins come top of mind. She's reminded me that pumpkin can be a very nutritious year-round food.
It's not just
whether it's in soups. The seeds are particularly nutritious. And so I would be remiss if I didn't remind folks that that shouldn't go to waste either.
Well, thank you for that. And so if people want updates on that or to understand it better, to get involved, is there any?
Yes, ma'am. EPA.gov. They have a specific site called Feed It Onward.
Feed It Onward.
There are opportunities, and we'd be happy to connect folks who are interested, maybe in the private sector, or partnering with EPA to divert excess otherwise nutritious foods. Yeah, great. It's amazing.
All right. Well, let's dive more into the MAHA strategy. So I'm just going to mention the top topics, and then we'll delve into whichever. We won't have time to delve into them all, but it'll give us something to talk about for the future, because I know you're working on some of these specifically. So, pioneering research for health solutions. MAHA is driving gold standard, conflict-free research into chronic diseases, disease causes like autism, vaccine injuries, and environmental exposures, using AI and real-world data. Love that, to uncover innovative prevention and treatment strategies for children. That's just music to my ears as a clinician. As you know, I deal in a lot of chronic disease, and it's disheartening because it is all preventable. Every single one of them is preventable. Transforming nutrition standards. I'm so excited to talk about this later with Hannah Anderson, and she's going to be on later, but with the dietary guidelines. I'm so curious on what they're going to do here, because our food pyramid is horrible.
That's right. And it's very confusing.
It's very
hopefully
confusing.
Great things ahead, but she can speak from experience.
Awesome. It says, continues successful efforts to restrict SNAP purchases of sugary addictive foods, close loopholes for harmful additives, and reduce reliance on ultra-processed foods that contribute to over 60% of children's calories. That is heartbreaking. Promote fitness and active lifestyle is another one. Reforming healthcare practices. I love this. Addressing over-medication by tackling misleading drug ads. We're the only country that has drug ads. No other country. No other country has drug ads.
I don't recall seeing any in my travels.
Reforming media curricula, and prioritizing prevention over medication to ensure health services serves children's long-term health. One of the things I'm noticing over and over is MAHA is about kids.
Yes.
Because the kids are our future, right? And I think that's one thing people need to understand. This isn't just, I think people just get so much wrong information in their head. And of course, the media never reports really what's really going on, especially if it's positive. They'll jump on if something bad happens because of MAHA.
Yeah, let's think about the future.
This is in your wheelhouse. Supporting sustainable farming. I'm going to let you talk about that. Driving deregulation and innovation. Boy, could we use some deregulation in the health and wellness arena, which is food. There's just so much overreach and oversight, and medical freedoms are being really impacted. Food freedom is being impacted. I don't think people realize that. Food freedom is being is being weaponized by our enemies, so there's a lot to talk about there.
Good point.
Raising public awareness, that's what we're doing here, but national campaigns on nutrition, screen time, environmental risk, empowering parents with transparent, science-based information to make informed health choices. That's really key because, and one of the things that's not on here, but could be in the kind of in the layers is the misleading marketing on ultra-processed foods.
That's right.
That has to be addressed, and maybe it's going to be in here in part of one of these buckets. But, yeah, for sure, because transparency, it's another transparency conversation. There's so many parents that think they're buying their kids healthy things because of what's marketed on the package. Yeah.
That's right.
And then fostering private sector collaboration. So of any of those, we can delve into whatever you want to talk about because you always are a wealth of information.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, I just love how as part of these strategies and recommendations, they are bringing farmers to the table right next to physicians, healthcare professionals like yourself, right next to lawyers and policy officials. Like farmers and ranchers are part of the solution here. And finally, we have an administration that recognizes that. And so what have they proposed to sort of uplift them and help provide answers? Well, streamlining applications for the organic certification process, right?
Is that just a big piece? Okay.
It's government, like I said, it's never really been the answer. And government programs, even when it comes to understanding and certifications on what you're consuming and labels, that's not always the most user friendly.
Right.
So
it means nothing to the average consumer.
It doesn't. And you mentioned AI earlier, and I am just so excited about hopefully USDA embarking on 21st century technologies to better serve farmers who are trying to do right by MAHA and their customers, and really get the technical and approval information and the approvals they need from government.
So can I ask you a question? Because you just mentioned about helping farmers get through some of these hurdles, for lack of a better term, to get the organic certification. So one thing I hear all the time, we train doctors across the country. We see a lot of patients. People ask this question all the time. Why is organic food so expensive? It's not available to the average consumer because it's just out of their budget, out of their price range. It's elite food. I think that is something with a lot of this dereg. And if we can get more farmers that are producing organic choices, the prices will come down, right?
Market-driven forces. We also, as conservatives, support free market. It's new and sort of on the scene. It has been a new type of farming that is not necessarily new anymore, that has provided additional revenue streams for traditional farmers and ranchers, and there seems to be consumer demand for it. So I would think by making processes much more streamlined, it makes those products more mainstream, right?
And organic, by definition, meaning limiting or eliminating chemical pesticides that have known to cause harm, and also GMO.
There's actually a very technical. There are very technical definitions. There's an advisory committee on it that full of experts that work with the department over time to evolve those standards, and they're constantly taking a look at those. And so I would suggest to folks genuinely curious to go in and read more about it. It's not as this bad, that's not good. It's
not as black and white
on this exact tomato. And so folks should take a look. And that's not to say that non-organic is bad. There's just a consumer preference in some circumstances on how their produce, fruit and vegetables, proteins are processed and produced.
And then is there any incentivization going on to try to get, to utilize American farms and get the American farming community? I know I've heard that generations are starting to drop off. It's not worth it. It's too much work. So what's happening in that?
That's right. So huge. We think domestic farmers should be part of the equation. We can generate greater production of U.S. agriculture as we are pursuing a healthy America. It's not, one or the other. There is a real devotion and dedication I have seen by this current U.S. Department of Agriculture, led by Secretary Brooke Rollins, to preserve and maintain small family farms. And I think 86% of farms in the U.S. are, by definition, small family farms. So they are our future. We want to make sure, and the One Big Beautiful Bill did this by managing the death tax for these folks.
Yes.
We want the market conditions to be right, but also tax policies to be right for parents, aunts, uncles to turn around and look at the future generations of their families and be like, you know what, we want you to enjoy, we want you to continue the legacy of our family farm. So as a think tank, I would presume the administration feels similarly. They want to saddle them to have those conversations in a positive light. Something we've been working on, a lot of times small family farms don't necessarily have the bandwidth or the political wherewithal to kind of navigate this complicated, or the resources to navigate the complex web of DC bureaucracy.
Because they need to be working on their farms and not dealing with all this other stuff.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So we have dedicated a lot of time here at the AFPI Rural Policy Center, really a effort to look at the individual issues different farmers across the country are facing, whether it's Andy Henry, a farmer from New Jersey whose farm is potentially subject to eminent domain seizure as a result of New Jersey's crazy affordable housing mandates. I know that USDA has taken a look at it, helping him as well. So really kind of busting through what are his options, just providing outside expertise to that family. There's another up in Potter Valley, a group of farmers actually in California who you're looking at these two dams being deconstructed by PG&E, and they are critical to Lake Pillsbury, where they've derived water for, over 100 years. And, I have an affinity and sympathy I have sympathy for California farmers because the regulatory environment is not always that great. It's wild because I'm from Kentucky. We wish we could grow everything California.
Oh my gosh.
But our regulatory environment is so much better. It's insane. Yeah. I think I read where agriculture is only 2% of California's GDP.
It should be.
Other states would love to be.
Yeah.
Whatever 2% looks like there, and their regulatory environment is not friendly. They're actually sort of this unspoken voice in California that just is viewed oftentimes by regulators as expendable, right?
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to stand up for them, both on the state level and federally, trying to preserve these two dams that contribute heavily to their water sources moving forward. So kind of looking at the needs of small family farms, different across the country regionally, everything is different. Some might be fighting water permitting in Washington State. I mentioned the New Jersey case. It just looks different for everyone. So we try to stop everything and do what we can to roll up our sleeves and help these folks.
That's awesome. I mean, and these are the stories people don't really know about what's really happening. And people really do need to get educated because, again, food security is national security, right?
And folks want their food. There is more, to your point, interest in transparency in the food supply. People want to support domestic farmers. They really like purchasing locally. A lot of times, and I'm so glad you're giving us a platform to share this, a lot of times locally, they are facing a mound of regulatory red tape.
Yeah.
That's the side, farmers are too busy working. I've said this before. They don't tell their story. So we see the problem. We go in, we roll up our sleeves and try to help them continue to farm.
That's awesome. So that was supporting sustainable farming. So, and you talked
soil health is huge.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Because we talk about soil health a lot when I do a lot of my education and trainings with doctors, and people are, the questions always come up, why are my patients so soil so demineralized? Right. It's showing up in body functions. And again, people don't really put two and two together, that the soil plays a role in how nutritious the food is.
That's right.
And also how it tastes.
That's right. So USDA has great voluntary conservation programming that can really contribute, if participation has grown heavily, to greater improved soil health outcomes. EQIP, the environmental quality incentives program, I believe, and the conservation reserve program. There are several that really reward voluntarily voluntary best practices when it comes to working in the land.
So incentivizing some of those best practices.
Yes, ma'am. And they've proven to be very effective, and those were acknowledged in the MAHA strategy.
Oh, that's great. That's great because, we see this again.
But we need to make those programs customer service friendly.
Yes. And don't add more loopholes for people to get through so it can get done faster. What about anything else on dereg that you want to talk about? I mean, I know you just gave a few examples, but there's a lot of regulation and a lot of it's state-driven. How does again, we speak the same language. Less government is better, but sometimes the federal government has to get involved because California farming doesn't just impact California. It impacts the whole country because that stuff is imported across state lines, right? So how does, if you can even share high level, how can the federal government create policy around that for lack of better words, override some of the overreaching and overregulation of some of these.
That's right. While also empowering cooperative federalism where you want the good ideas to float up. I think this administration particularly has done a fabulous job of really coordinating with states where it's working, ground up policies, but understanding the national ramifications. Sometimes if they go too far, you shouldn't let one state drive policy for the rest of the country, especially when the federal government is trying to get out of the way
exactly.
from the states. But dereg is critical. And dereg to me, working in an area that is so kind of hyper-focused on the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have so many programs that farmers are engaged in. And so dereg to me is also customer service, modernize IT, application streamlining. So a lot of times we hear sort of the big, bold dereg agenda, and that is totally valid. We want to see more energy dominance, which is a result of deregulation. We want to see more clarity in permitting through NEPA and what have you. But dereg to me even means like making government more workable and day-to-day programming as well.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. And raising public awareness. We talked a little bit about that. What about, you talked a little bit about fostering private sector collaboration.
That's right.
What do you mean by that?
That's right. So I believe, I'll pick up where we left off. I believe last time we were discussing how many companies had made private sector commitments, whether it was sort of the dairy industry in removing food dyes from school lunches voluntarily, I think by the end of 2026, don't quote me on that. Similar commitments in ice cream. You're seeing a lot of restaurants come forward and propose to take certain oils and other additives, dyes out of certain products in their menus. You're seeing cereals. I think it was like General Mills, and we love Lucky Charms in our families, but those rainbows are a little bright, right? And so
they're very bright.
Yes, they are. So peeling a little bit of that back. So it's kind of an all of the above. Everyone should hold hands and jump together and see what they can do in their supply chains, make these commitments. And fortunately, this MAHA conversation are forcing these companies to make these decisions. Their bookkeepers may not have seen this coming. Right. This is important by public health. And it's great to see folks are acting quickly to remove certain chemicals and other unnecessary ingredients from.
Well, and I think there's just been such a massive push for, this is where, because we're not overly censored anymore like we were 4 years ago. This is where social media has really stepped up with educating and bringing awareness. I just think so many people just weren't even aware that this is a problem.
That's right. And I think the companies that are making voluntary commitments are seeing a resounding applause from their customers, and they're all seeing that online as well as on social
push from
media. So does that create a little bit of competitiveness? I wondered that across companies, especially in the beverage industry.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
For sure. Okay, I love that. Also, what I was going to ask a little bit about. Reforming some healthcare practices, but that's probably for another conversation later. What's going on in with policy around raising? Is there any policy around public awareness, or what are you guys working here at AFPI on policy-wise towards this MAHA agenda? I guess that's really what I want to know.
That's right. We want to be a steady hand for the number of agencies, like you said, as they're digesting these strategies that have been proposed. Now implementation is in their hands, and we want to be standing here for them, ready with those policy solutions. I think the strategies were fairly broad. They provide some good, decent direction, but a lot of times the devil's in the details, obviously. So we want to lend that expertise as far as next steps and actually implementing it, whether it's rulemaking, that has to a lot of times. So folks will see, I guess for your listeners, so the strategy's out, that's great. But now it's time to go do it.
Get the work
Coming
done.
from an agency, I know I worked at the White House, but I also worked at an agency before too. The Administrative Procedures Act, so that's like the statute you have to follow to promulgate a rulemaking, right? Because absent new law, and sometimes even with new law, you have to promulgate a rulemaking. I mean, that takes a while to write the rule. There's usually it goes for review at the Office of Management and Budget, then it gets put in the Federal Register, and then it's out for 30, 60, 90 day, ideally 90 for greater public input, public comment, period. I mean, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
We have, the administration has a little bit over 3 years left to do all this.
Right.
So it is mission critical.
All hands on deck.
AFDI is ready for these next steps ideas.
Yeah. So, and it's not as easy as just the swipe of a pen. You wish it was that easy. But there's so many layers.
Exactly. So the first Trump administration. So I think this administration hit the ground running, especially this time on executive orders, MAHA commission, right? Interagency working groups. In my limited experience to one agency, it was more rulemaking heavy out the gate. There were executive orders, but at that point, it was the beginning of 4 years. If it takes 2 years to do a proposed, if it takes a year to propose a rule, you might need another to finalize it. So you're kind of doing this math in your head. So fortunately, this administration...
It's like a ticking clock.
Exactly, especially now where there's only like 3 years for this current administration left. So my point is they seemed a little bit more organized. They had experience out the jump this time, but really prioritizing what you want to move forward with. Because a lot of times these agencies, the same team, think about FDA, the same team working on... I'm going to say GRAS might be working on another MAHA priority, or the same folks at the same mission area at USDA working on conservation programs. They also oversee disaster aid at some point. So how do you kind of prioritize and go? And so I think that's why think tanks like ours are additive to help them be able to think about walking and chewing gum.
So are we seeing more collaboration between the agencies and within the agencies?
100%. They all know each other.
Yeah.
A lot of them are back from serving the president during the first administration. I think our founder, obviously, our founders between Secretaries McMahon and Rollins obviously worked really well together. But they also worked with Scott Turner at HUD before. We've seen so much collaboration just because there was already Zeldin, obviously, is an FBI alum. Just folks are used to working with each other. And so it's not a get to know you, it's a get to work in the beginning.
Right. And it really seems like that's what's happening in this collaboration, because the lack of collaboration, you can have the greatest idea ever, but if everything gets stalled because of people's agendas.
That's right. And I think, the president is brilliant in the cabinet he's put together because of this pre-existing working relationship they all had. A lot of times we've seen Republican and Democratic administration is this your lane? Is this my lane? Who cares? Then what's getting done if you're trying to figure out lanes? Whereas I've heard in this administration, you'll have one secretary have an issue flag that transcends agencies. They'll immediately call up or FaceTime hey, have you heard about this other issue? Just like you and I work on issues from time to time. So, that seems to be effective. What we have going, you would want that in your federal government too.
100%. Yeah. And again, I just don't see how it's unfathomable to me that there's could be a mindset that, number one, there's a lane when it comes to our children's health, our food security, the health of the American citizens in general. It's a bipartisan issue. I say this over and over and over and over, right?
And to me, preserving family farms isn't just a USDA issue.
Yes.
It's a Department of Interior. There are so many public acres that our farmers and ranchers, they work that land. They need access. That is Department of Interior, largely, some USDA. Water rights issues, that's Department of Interior, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is an independent agency, which we can have a whole another conversation on that at some point. But it's not just siloed to anyone owning the future of one particular issue.
Right. Just like MAHA doesn't HHS doesn't own MAHA. It is, as we've discussed, almost every agency touches it.
Yes. No, it's a plethora. Nearly all agencies are on that commission. And kudos to the White House policy councils and the president for soliciting all of the above input there. So we're going to improve children's health.
Yeah, for sure, because it is the future. Wow, there's just so much to learn. Every time I come here, I'm like, again, I've dipped my little pinky toe in, this machine, and it's just hats off to all of you guys that are up here really, really working and doing the work every day. I come into these offices and nobody's just sitting around chit-chatting. There is stuff.
The
energy is like this, like your energy. It's amazing. Anything else related to farming, food, the MAHA agenda that is, near and dear to your heart that you're working on, that you really want people to understand? Like, what do you think in your mind is probably one of the most kind of untalked about thing? There's a lot that goes on in social media. There's nothing on mainstream media about the health of Americans and children.
That's right.
What do you want to get out there that you would just wish would go viral?
That's right. What would I leave you with that should go viral? I truly believe that it's not just farmers and ranchers I am looking out for. I am, dedicating my professional career to revitalizing rural America, where I came from. I came from a small town, largely underpinned by farming. Agriculture is still a top 6 rural employer, but it's, they are a huge backbone to rural America.
Yeah.
But I want to work on policies that bring jobs back to rural America, that bring private childcare back to rural America, that incentivize educators to want to move or return to or go and have maybe a more peaceful way of life in rural America, to improve our healthcare systems. Transportation costs for rural schools are way insane compared to schools in more metropolitan areas. So I'm constantly thinking, and my colleagues at AFPI are thinking, what can we do to revitalize a rural renaissance in rural America? And what do those policies look like? So I don't necessarily just stay the ag lane there.
Sure.
If that takes an all of the above approach too. Is it trade deals? Is it finding new places for, we grow our crops, they have to have somewhere to go, both domestically. So encouraging more domestic consumption. We could be doing more of that as far as our fruits and vegetables, and growing more fruits and vegetables here at home versus importing them. But then for our other markets where we've seen excess crops, where are the trade deals? They have to have somewhere to go. And I know the president is working really, really hard on finding new markets for a variety of goods for U.S. Manufacturers, but especially for our farmers. And so I'm excited to see the fruits of that labor, on some of these trade deals that should be forthcoming. So we haven't talked much about that. But
we should talk about that, because I think bringing awareness to the really just the challenges that rural America faces, from everything you just mentioned to healthcare access, to schools, we had talked about even laboring women and having babies if it's after hours.
That's right.
Too bad, so sad.
You might ask Hannah, my colleague. She's wonderful. She has much energy. I actually read a statistic, or 2 key statistics I'll leave you with, on the rural health piece. One of the first, is my understanding, lines of service to close at a rural hospital is maternity. And as a mama too, that breaks my heart. You've probably seen it. It's because that is around-the-clock care that has to be provided. More labor goes into it, no pun. And it's just one of the first offerings that tend to go when it becomes harder to maintain a rural hospital. And then when rural hospitals close, I think I've seen a stat thrown on like 4% to closed in recent years. Patients have to drive 20 to 40 miles further to get basic health services. And then the 40 miles is more on the more specialized care. And that just is devastating to me, because, we're here in a more metropolitan area. It's easy to kind of work on appointments here and there.
Right.
Could you imagine having to drive 40 miles to
and having to take time off work and all of this.
If you're lucky to have a job, so I just that needs to be.
And bringing more manufacturing back to rural America.
Yes, ma'am.
And getting
We've lost
jobs.
some of it, especially over the past 4 years. We've seen telecommunications a variety of domestic manufacturing just depart rural areas, but they're slowly coming back. I'm from Kentucky, and this city, I hardly even could call it a city, it's a county, Mercer County, Kentucky. iPhone is committing to manufacturing a certain part of, I believe, the glass screens and maybe some other, and generating hundreds of jobs in this very rural part of Kentucky that is not close, by the way. It's over an hour away from major cities there. I mean, that's what we want to see, those types of rural investment. What that's going to do for that community, my mind is still blown. Yeah. We need to see more of that, and I think the president is committed to that kind of leadership to bring those manufacturers back. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You're just a wealth of information as always, and just
throwing in the random facts.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, it's like when I'm with you, I'm like, blah, stick. I hope some of it sticks.
No, thank you. And we'd love to come back at any point with an update.
Every time I'm in D.C., I'm going to call you.
Yes, ma'am. And I got something for you, too.
All right.
So you got to have me back. Thanks.
Have a good one.